Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to begin in just a moment. As you enter into the room, please feel free to drop your name and your organization in the chat. Good afternoon. My name is Monica Parrish-Trent, and I am the Chief Program and Network Officer at Achieving the Dream. And it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to this afternoon's webinar, Learning from the 2023 Leah Meyer Austin Award winner, Sinclair Community College. During today's webinar, you'll hear from Dr. Kathleen Cleary and Dr. Steve Johnson from Sinclair Community College, our president and CEO, as well as the senior vice president. You'll also hear from Dr. Karen Stout, our president and CEO of Achieving the Dream. And we'll also have our colleagues, Dr. Ryan Knight and Meredith Arthur Hatch, supporting today's webinar. To kick us off, we have Dr. Karen A. Stout, who will provide a general welcoming and get us started with this tremendous, exciting webinar. Karen?
Thank you, Monica. Welcome, everyone. This is always one of our favorite webinars of the year. It's an opportunity for us to showcase and highlight the work of our Leah Meyer Austin Award winner. The Leah Meyer Austin Award is Achieving the Dream's biggest honor that we award annually, and we've been doing this since 2008 to a network college that shows significant, sustained improvement in student learning outcomes, while at the same time reducing equity gaps, which ATD is often refers to as institutional performance gaps, that really accelerate the student success work on their campuses and in their communities. I just want to say a word about Leah Meyer Austin. Occasionally she's able to join us on these webinars. She is not with us today. But the award is named in her honor because she's one of the founding board members of Achieving the Dream. And even before that, Leah was a program officer with the Lumina Foundation. And it was Leah's idea back in 2003, 2004, to form a network of colleges that would be funded by the Lumina Foundation that would take a look at completion rates, especially for students of color and low-income students. And to support those colleges with capacity building supports through coaching and disaggregation of data that would help these colleges to improve completion rates. Now we're almost 20 years after Leah had that vision into what has become a movement that's not just for community colleges, but for all of higher education. And in many ways, we have Leah to thank for her vision and foresight. And so therefore, the award is named in her honor. I'm really pleased today to have President Johnson and Kathleen Cleary with us to tell us the Sinclair story. So they're going to show some of the work and the data. And then after that presentation, we'll have a conversation with President Johnson and with Kathleen, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience. So with that, I think we have this beautiful picture of Sinclair at Dream in Chicago receiving the Leah Meyer Austin Award. And I think it shows that this is really a team and full college effort. And Sinclair has been at this work for a long time and is very representative of what sustained focus can do around student success. So with that, I'm going to turn it off and over to President Johnson and Kathleen Cleary.
Karen, thank you. This is Steve Johnson, president of Sinclair Community College. What a nice introduction. It is such a pleasure to be with all of you today. I'm I'm speaking to you, probably doesn't matter to you, but I'm speaking to you from beautiful downtown Dayton, Ohio right now, and probably just across the way from my colleague Kathleen Clary, who has been working with our teams within Sinclair for many, many years to help more students get more education. It's great to be with you today. Karen, you do such a great job with achieving the dream. I want to make sure I don't lose that thought before I talk about whatever Sinclair's doing. Achieving the Dream is one of the most important organizations in the history of education, and has done so much to catalyze more student success, more equitable student success, and more engagement and focus on things that really matter in ways that are really important. So thank you so much for having us today. Thank you for the recognition. And I'd like to just, my colleague Kathleen Clary is going to give you some of the specifics of that, which we've done at Sinclair, which I think for those of you who are representing colleges across the nation, you'll recognize many of these things. We're doing many of the things that you're doing, and they're working at Sinclair like they're working at your college. So we want to just talk about those and reinforce those. Before we do, I just want to set a bit of context of where Sinclair is, where we are. When I said speaking to you from beautiful downtown Dayton, Ohio, if we looked at a map of Ohio, we're right down in the southwestern quadrant of the state, just a little bit to the west of Columbus and about an hour north of Cincinnati. And we have been here at Sinclair or we've been operating as a workforce education, adult education institution since 1887 in one form or the other. So we're kind of old. We're celebrating almost 137 years now at Sinclair, and we've been trying things over the decades to help more students get more education in the context of serving Dayton and southwestern Ohio in that particular economy as it's morphed over the years and continues to morph. I'd like to share with you this photo. This photo is probably the one. If Karen, if you and your colleagues at Achieving the Dream said, Steve, you can use one slide ever to talk about Sinclair, this would be it. This is the one slide I would use. It's a photograph of graduation at Sinclair. We use the University of Dayton basketball arena for our graduation in the spring, and it'll be in May this year, May 6th. And I just love this photo because it represents all that's good and right about what all of us are doing across the nation in community college education. It is a group of, I don't know, 8,000-9,000 people celebrating the success of the students, and so anyhow, that one photograph is just means everything. But you're letting me do some more than that. So if I move to the next one, and still setting some context about Sinclair, just so you could size us up. We're not the biggest community college in the nation, but we are sizable. Our fall enrollment would be running around 18,000 college credit students, but overall in a given year, because I like this number, not necessarily because it's bigger, but it's just more accurate when we answer the question, how many people are we serving in college credit education a year? It's actually about 32,000 a year on an annual basis, and probably another 10 to 12,000 in non-credit programs. So there are a number of people that are being served by that which we do at Sinclair, and so I just wanted to share that with you so you kind of size this up a little bit. On an academic degree and certificate basis, we have about 300 areas of study, majors, things you can focus on at Sinclair in academic areas. About just like the rest of us in community colleges, about 90% of our graduates remain in Southwestern Ohio region to live and work after graduation. That's very typical. It's one of the beautiful things we do in community college education is that we're working to think globally, to have a global consciousness, but act locally. and act within the parameters of our local region. So this is really pretty much where Sinclair's graduates and students and sphere of influence is probably within this region, which there are many community colleges, by the way, in this and universities in this region. We're really proud of that. We're really proud of what we do in Ohio. And a shout out to all of my colleagues from higher ed in Ohio. We're doing a pretty good job, and I'm really proud of all of y'all and what we're doing. One other thing that I'd like to share with you, actually 2 more slides, and I'm going to ask Kathleen if she'll just get to a punchline and what we're doing to help more students get more education. But I'd like to share 2 more slides with you, again, in the sizing up. It's always good to know where you are. There's so much fog in the world. So it's hard to know. So we at Sinclair are not I shouldn't say we're constantly, but we're frequently and routinely surveying and polling and doing market research on the outside and on the inside, because it's really important to us to just know as much as we can about where are we. And so in a recent, for example, a recent Montgomery County voter poll, and we're in Montgomery County, we're headquartered in Montgomery County, Ohio. The population about 550,000 people. And we serve more than that one county, but people come to us from more than one county, but that's the size of that county. We have a 74% approval rating. We're heading in the right direction in the most recent market study. And this is not unusual. We get numbers like this, like Sinclair's in the right direction, frequently. So to put that in context, I think the county itself is like at a 24%. The nation itself is at a 25%. So voters are not necessarily all that positive about things going in the right direction nationally or the state or what, but at our college, they think we're doing a pretty good job. Probably more important than this poll was also this fall, and it's the last slide I have here before I turn it over to my colleague, is that we have at Sinclair, we're one of the community colleges, there's 6 of us out of 23 that have a extra source of funding through an extra real estate tax that is an option. It's an optional that the local Montgomery County, for example, can vote in a tax. So recently we were on the ballot and we had a 71% pass rate, and this is in a county that is not a blue county at all. It's a red county. It's kind of split, but it's more red than blue. And so to have a 71% tax rate pass on a tax that hits their pocketbooks, that's a big deal. And so it's one thing to say, yeah, we approve of where you're going, but it's another thing to say, not only do we approve of you, but even at that same 70-some% level, we appreciate what you're doing so much that we're going to pay more money out of our pocket on an optional basis to fund you even more, to help more students get more education faster, and for them less money in Montgomery County. So with that, there's a lot that we've done over the last many years. It wasn't there's no quick thing that we've done. It's not overnight. And my colleague, Senior Vice President Kathleen Clary, who has been the leader for a number of our initiatives, and is former provost, former associate provost, former dean, former chair, knows, in really intimate detail, just how we have approached change management, when to change, when not to change, when to hold them, when to fold them, when to walk away, when to run, all that, go back to that song. So I'd like to turn it over now to Kathleen, who's going to provide a little bit more detail, aside from the context that I said, of like what have we done at Sinclair to help more students get more education faster and for less money.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Johnson. On the next slide, we'll see the change we are seeking, which is, quite frankly, to increase graduation rates while at the same time reducing the attainment gap for underserved populations. And our timeline really, as Dr. Johnson said, we have been at this for 136, almost 137 years. But I chose just the last 20 years to give you a sampling of the kinds of national initiatives we have been working on to try to increase student success and completion. I'll point out achieving the dream in the interest of this webinar, and also because, as Dr. Johnson said, it was one of the most impactful things for us as we started to really get serious about increasing student completion. Another one that I'll point out on this timeline was in 2012. We were the lead college of completion by design, funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. There were 3 states involved. One of them was Ohio. We led Ohio, so I'm thrilled to have our colleagues from Ohio who really helped us learn on this journey. So really glad to have you. And the punchline is last year, we awarded 11,000 degrees and certificates, which is up from about 3,500 or so 10 years ago. And I'll share more data as we go on. The first thing we tried to do was communicate the vision and design with the end in mind. And to hit the punchline, we wanted our students to be ready for good jobs in careers that would lead to a family sustaining wage. And we wanted to make sure they were transferring with a minimal loss of credit at the junior year status. So in order to do that, we had to work on our academic pathway and had to make sure students were ready to have a great start at college. And for that, we partnered with high schools and with those serving adult learners. So on the next slide, you'll see we really focused on 4 major strategies. We had about 100 to 120 different initiatives that were focused on student success and completion. There's a sampling below, but they all were tied to one of these 4 core initiatives or strategies that were research-based. We knew the data showed that they would help increase student completion. And that was accelerating time to completion, redesigning the academic pathway, holistic advising, and reviewing institutional and state policies. So we tried to keep it simple with 4 things for all of our employees to focus on and know were priorities. And on the next slide, you'll see we did the same thing for students. And for full-time students in their first year, we looked at our data and we got this idea from the Tennessee Board of Regents, and we brought it back and checked it against our own data, made a few tweaks, but we told students if they did these 5 things, they'd be 4 times more likely to graduate. Make a decision on a major, have a purpose, go to advising and get a My Academic Plan, which we call a MAP, completing college level math and English in the first year, taking 30 credits, and taking 9 credits in their major. We have another recipe for part-time students, but that shows how we tried to take a really complicated thing and keep it to 5 things a student could focus on. You'll see in doing this that we had great results. And so as we continue to the next slide, you'll see that we're going to first look at our 3-year graduation rates. And we started with a 6% overall IPEDS rate, 3-year graduation rate for full-time students. We got to 38% last year, which is great. If you look at African-American males, which was a priority population for us, we were at 2% and got to 37%. So we have almost closed the gap. And for all minority students, we've gone from 1% to, minority students, it was 1% to 37%. And so looking at that, and African-American males, it was 34%. So really have done a lot of work to close the gap. On the next slide, you'll see we focused on all students, full and part-time students have gone from 1,800 in 2006 to 11,000 degrees and certificates, an increase of 511%. And then as we look at minority students on the next slide, you'll see we've increased by 470% from 538 to 3,069. And for African-American students on the next slide, we've increased by 493% from 426 to 2528. And then what you'll see on the next slide is how this has not only affected student success, which is what our driver was, but it also increased revenue for us because in Ohio, we are 100% performance-based funding. And so by increasing our student success, we also increased our state share of instruction from about 10% to 11.8%, which gave us an additional $7 million this year over what we would have been if we were still at 10%. And so the investments we made early on not only helped students, which again was our driver, but it helped us have more resources to help more students and to reinvest in student success. So a few lessons learned as I wrap up. First was balancing urgency and patience. We knew we needed to make a big call to action and get everyone on board to get to work immediately, but that it was going to take time. And you could see over a 20-year period, we did see change. We also learned that the composition of the team needed to change at every phase of the work, and that by involving more people on a work team, we would build buy-in because people felt more comfortable implementing something they helped build. We knew that pilots weren't enough, and so when we do new work, we plan for scale and institutionalization, but then we start small and gradually build with a plan. We have a phrase called customization at scale, and what this means is we know that different students need to be treated differently. So a veteran, a single mom, someone in a rural area, someone in an urban area, different ages need different services at different times. And so our goal now is to give every student what they need when they need it. And finally, we knew we had to hire, review, and promote for the big goal of helping more students graduate and closing any attainment gaps. So that concludes our presentation. I'm happy to take any questions or turn it back over to Karen and others for questions.
Thank you, Kathleen. And President Johnson, I'm going to call you Steve from here on out. I hope that's okay.
That's perfect.
Okay, great. You gave us so much in that presentation, and there are a lot of requests in the chat for copies of the PowerPoint slides, so we'll make sure we get that out to folks. There's a lot there that is actionable. Honestly, colleges can borrow from some of your great work and try to put it into action on their campuses. This is for both of you. Sinclair's been involved, I think early in the presentation, you show the timeline. You've been involved in a number of national and state student success efforts since 2005 when you came into Achieving the Dream. Can you talk a little bit about how you've leveraged your work with Achieving the Dream and how you've been able to build coherence between the blend of engagements you've been involved in to really accelerate your student success work?
Thanks, Karen. I'll take a first shot at that. So I think the point that we have engaged in a lot of different things over time is true. And the time was right. I mean, really, about the time that Achieving the Dream was founded, the motivation for founding that was the motivation of, well, community colleges have emerged over the 50s, 60s, and 70s to provide access to where access did not exist. But now that we have really gotten a handle on that, what are we going to do to make sure that we aren't simply a revolving door, so that we will have success, access with excellence, to coin a phrase. And with that, that was the motivation at that time. And we wanted to be a part of that. We desperately wanted to be a part of that with you all and with SESI, the survey of student engagement, with actually even with the Higher Learning Commission and AQUIP. There were a number of things, and we knew both instinctively and I think just knowing knowing that we couldn't do everything at once, but we could do many things if we could figure out how to merge them. So we spend a lot of time just, I can't even remember by what mechanism we merged them, other than it was a concern. It was like a daily concern. Let us merge as much as we can so that we can be as efficient as we can. Let's not just we didn't want to have these different silos everywhere. And it's like, let's try to put this in the core of what we're doing every day in every way. So let's merge achieving the dream with what's going on with eventually, with what we're learning from our SESI survey and the other surveys from that. What we're doing then with completion by design later, that was later, but and like how do we pull this all together? And it worked. I mean, that whole, I think there was just this whole drumbeat and mantra of like, let's just be as efficient as we can, pull this stuff together as much as we can. So I think that was key.
I'm glad you said that, because for those colleges that are out there that are involved in a lot of efforts, and I think all of them are important, but what you said about being intentional from the very beginning about building coherence and prioritizing is really important, so that there's not siloed initiative kind of work that piles up on a college. Kathleen, do you want to make any observations on that question?
Yeah, I would say too, having 4 things or 5 things and having everything kind of come up to those 4 or 5 also helps build coherence, so it doesn't seem scattershot. And just to comment on the role of ATD, I think for us, the coaches were really helpful in pushing our thinking, and also being able to benchmark our colleagues at DREAM, at the Institute, and just being able to pick up the phone and call other network colleges was extraordinarily helpful to us.
I know that one of the fundamentals of ATD was to disaggregate data, and thank you for showing that disaggregation in your slides. And
among one of the most important things in our business.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was hidden in plain sight? Like, what surprised you? Like, because something caused you to say, this is unacceptable.
Yeah, I sat in the green room yesterday with some faculty recounting the story that Kathleen can recount right now, if you'd like.
Sure. So I was a new faculty member at that point, and we were all I was a chair, we're all in the green room, and we were presented with our disaggregated data. There were gasps. A lot of people were saying, this can't be right. The data's wrong. I don't think, and people were challenging it. And I had only been at the college a year or two, so I was still kind of learning. And I remember that was one of the most impactful things for me as a faculty member in the last 20 years, just seeing our data and going, this.
Well, it felt horrible. I mean, it's like what we saw was like, oh my gosh, this is not us. This is not the way we are. This is not what we know of us. We're awesome. This is not awesome. And it's like, well, no, it's not. And so let's get to awesome.
So many things to ask about. I mean, you talk about 4 completion strategies in the presentation, and that gives you a really crisp student success framework. And in seeing the presentation, I'm wondering how you got to those 4 strategies, but I'm also thinking, was it at the point that you started to narrow down those 4 strategies that the flywheel started to turn? Because something happened in 2016 where your rates, like, you had been kind of going along for almost a decade with incremental growth, and then all of a sudden it shot up.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. So I want to call out Lorraine County Community College and Stark State College, who are our 2 sister colleges in completion by design. And we came together to choose for Ohio what the 4 or 5 things we were going to focus on. And then Sinclair adapted and embedded those strategies in our culture. And for us, all of that was research-based. We knew, the first one was time to completion. That came out of Complete College America's Time is the Enemy. And we knew the longer a student stayed in school, the more likely they were to drop and not be able to finish. the academic pathways, we knew teaching and learning was the core of what we were doing. And there were a lot of data presentations about the more credits you had in the pathway, the less likely a student was to complete. Again, they might leave with being 3 or 6 credits shy. So every credit mattered. And holistic advising, one data point that was really impactful for us was we found that 40% of our students who dropped had an A or B average, that life was getting in the way. And so we had to look not only at academic support, but personal, financial, and career. They needed to have a purpose. They needed to know where they were going. And then for policies, the fourth one, we often talk about the starfish model. You save one, you save one. Policy gets you to save hundreds or thousands. It is the infrastructure, it is the big net that catches people. And so we focused on data-driven big levers within policy that would help our students complete in much higher numbers.
Yeah, those are really good examples. I love getting to policy. That really then that might explain some of the rapid growth that when you were able to get from practice that was not connected necessarily, but to policy, that was the big lever. And I'm wondering, as you think about those strategies, were there any strategies that, we think about universal design and we think about targeted design, the increase in African American student success and the closing of the gap, was it those universal strategies, or was it a combination of universal strategies and other strategies that really helped move the needle?
I think it was I truly believe it was a combination of strategies. I think it was also the fact that it took us a period of time to engage a critical mass of our colleagues. And it takes time, whether it's 5, 6, 7 years, to get to the point where out of 1,000 full-time employees, and I'm talking about faculty and staff, 1,000 full-time working here, to get 700 to 800 of us, one way or the other, that were routinely engaged in this with an understanding of how and why. It just took that long. And so I think that was part of it. That's why I say it's holistically both. And we had a particular African American male initiative that took off at that point in time, a new design, and just and other things just gelled. And it just but I think the point is it just takes some time, and it's not one. It's not one silver bullet. It's not even 5. You really have to have a portfolio of things and get to that tipping point of engagement.
Mm-hmm.
I can give a policy issue.
Yes, give us an example.
We went to multiple measures for placing students, and when we look, the national data would show, a lot of students of color and students in poverty are more likely to be placed lower in Dev Ed. And so when we went to a 3.0 grade point average as one of the metrics we used, it disproportionately helped our most vulnerable students. And we used to have about 7,000 students in Dev Ed. I think now we're around 700. And we found that we are able, through co-requisite remediation and through math academies, math modules, boot camps, other ways of getting students the help they need when they need it. That made a huge difference as well.
Another mantra was time is the enemy. And anything that extends the time of a student in this endeavor is the enemy of success. And so that drove so many changes. Like, let's shorten this. Let's make sure we're not extending this. Let's not do anything whatsoever to encourage more time at Sinclair, because more time at Sinclair means life will happen and you will probably not complete.
That leads me to the next question. You've been at this student success work now for almost 20 years. This is for you, Steve. How have you led the college in maintaining focus and momentum around student success? In those early years when you only were seeing things move a little bit, there had to be a little bit of discouragement but what kept you focused, unwavering in your commitment as a president to making a difference and changing student success trajectories?
I was going to say the word that came to mind was spite. I was going to spiteful, like we're going to do this one way or the other. I'm going to die trying. I think I would love to be able to claim that we were masters of the theory or philosophy of being proactive. I truly believe that we were strategically reactive to the environment around us. I mean, we did not invent achieving the dream. It came into our awareness and we reacted. We did not, the whole concern about the revolving door, we did not invent that, but we listened to that. We did not invent the shortening, the time is the enemy. But it's like, okay, well, that has a ring of truth. And so, and our desire here at Dayton to be a part of what's going on nationally is very strong. We don't want to be isolated. We don't want to be, we want to be as mainstream as possible in innovation. It really is important to us. It's part of our culture. So we just kept, we need to keep going. We need to keep, we need to keep doing that. We need to win. And what winning to us is more students getting more education. And that the photograph of the big room, the UD Arena, the University of Dayton Arena, the University of Dayton Arena, and our graduation is what I'm referring to, and the 8,000 people sitting there. We actually use that over and over again. It's like we literally call that arena the big room, and it is our goal to get more and more people in the big room. And we had t-shirts everywhere, posters everywhere, get in the big room. We're going to put you in the big room. We're going to fill the big room. And it's just things like that. I mean, just like, because we are not going to give up, and we didn't, and it's worked out so well so far.
Kathleen, you talked about customization at scale. Can you offer any advice to the colleges that are listening in how they might adapt that concept to their context, including building on your suggestion that they plan for scale from the very beginning? Like, what does that mean and what does that look like?
Sure. So planning, one of my colleagues, Dr. Mary Wells, who may even be on the call, I think I saw her name, led the work around our maps, my academic plans and our pathways. And that's a great example of both customization at scale and planning for scale. We knew we were going to have a lot of things to work out and trying to redesign our academic pathways. So we started with 5 of our largest programs that would affect the most students. And Mary and her team spent hours and hours and hours working with faculty and advisors to figure out how we were going to do these ideal pathways, but make them flexible enough that they could be customized for every individual student. So with 31,000 students, we have 31,000 maps that are all customized based on whether the student's full-time, part-time, they can come at night, study online, you name it. And so that's an example. And so she started with 5. And then the plan from the very beginning was we were going to add 15 programs at a time until we had them all. And so I'd say, it was going along. And there are resistors with any issue. And when that happened, it was the students who went to their professors and said, hey, all my friends have these maps. I want a map too. And so it just naturally worked out. It wasn't easy, but we did plan from the beginning how we were going to get it to every single student.
And you can't customize at scale without relying on technology. The technology doesn't do the customization. You have to plan for it. But how did you integrate? Was there a technology strategy that you integrated into your student success strategy?
Yes, we developed the student success plan as actually it was an earlier initiative and goes back to Dr. Johnson's idea of we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. Let's take what we already have, figure it out. So we used that technology that had already been developed in-house to launch that.
That was a Title III grant, was it not?
Yes.
Yeah, so there was a question in the chat about was there any form of technology used, and you're saying yes, but you took something you already had in place and adapted it to what your customization strategy was.
Right.
I love the way you mentioned that at some point in the design, students started to see the benefit and they accelerated the adoption because they were asking for it. And I think sometimes we forget that students can have that kind of influence in helping us with the rate of adoption and to get past some of the resistance.
Our Phi Theta Kappa chapter took completion as their project one year. And so they surveyed 1,000 students for us, they analyzed the data, and they brought it to me and said, here are what students think are the biggest barriers. And so we were able to weave that into our planning.
There's another question in the chat which is interesting, and it's in follow-up, Steve, to your time is the enemy comment. Have you started any conversations about competency-based courses as maybe a new way to get at the time to degree or time to credential conversation?
Yeah, and I would rather Kathleen field that. We have, with me just saying that, we have an entire portfolio of things that we have done with curriculum redesign, shortening the curriculum because it had grown and bloated, and the faculty did an unbelievable job, and that was 10 years ago now, to prune the curriculum so that it would be shorter. Certificates, degrees, stackable certificates, those things that give students milestones and completion points prior to, an associate's degree, but just all those things to be short. My academic plan, so they didn't waste time and they knew where they were going, the map. And then competency-based, Kathleen, what would you say?
Sure, happy to jump in. That was our Department of Labor grant. We were one of the first community colleges in the country to develop CBE, or competency-based education. And so we when we first started, it was every Monday a student could start a new course, and when they finished, they could start another one. So we had this rolling entry into the curriculum. It was possible, though, because of the long work we had done on online learning, and our online learning is very competency based and mastery of competencies. And so that helped us just fold right into CBE, or competency-based education. We started in IT, and we've now expanded to many different fields.
I love the recipe card, the recipe for success, and I guess students are 4 times more likely to graduate if they follow those five pieces of the recipe. Can you speak a little bit about how that has been a culture changer for you?
Yeah, so because it was literally a card the size of a recipe, we have them in stacks all over. Advisors give them out, faculty can give them out. Thank you. And so each of these were data driven, based on, we knew a student needed to have a purpose. We knew if they went to advising and had a map, they were more likely to graduate. The college level math and English came to the forefront, I think, through Complete College of America, but it was also part of Strong Start to Finish, which was a national initiative. And that helped us a lot because we were focused on improving success in each Dev Ed course. But it wasn't until we looked at the throughput that we saw we were killing students in the lowest level of Dev Ed. And so we were able then to develop strategies, and then it helped the students see, oh, I really need to complete this in the first year, because many students wanted more Dev Ed classes. It was the complete opposite of what we would have thought, because they were afraid. And we said, actually, your best shot of graduating is get into the college level class as quickly as possible. We'll give you the supports you need to be successful and finish it. Same thing, 30 credits of the 5, that's the most predictive. This came the 15 to finish. You probably have, many of people have heard that, try and get students to take 15 credits. Many of our students are working, almost all of them. So for them, taking 12 credits at a time and then 6 over the summer didn't matter as long as they got to 30 by the end of the year. Our data showed they'd be successful. And the 9 credits in your major area of interest, we use as a proxy that you're engaged in your program of study, you've met your program faculty, you feel a sense of belonging. that is also highly predictive, but all 5 together really are remarkable.
Yeah, I love the comment in the chat that you took, you turned some of the research from early momentum metrics too, but you made it student facing so the students understand it. It's not in our jargon on what we mean by how we measure and what we mean by early momentum metrics, but it puts it's student facing and the students understand what it is. Yeah, Steve, and please, for those of you in the webinar, keep putting questions into the chat. I'm trying to, as we have the conversation, pull some of your questions in. There is a question that just popped up in the chat that I was just going to ask, and there's a lot of conversation about advising and design of advising. Can you talk a little bit about your advising model and how it might have shifted the job responsibilities for advisors?
We have shifted that repeatedly. I mean, I think advising is something that, and one of the things that I'm proud of what we have done in the results. I'm proud of the fact that we not only listened to our external advisors during this entire journey, but we listened to ourselves, and our advisors and our engaged faculty and our student-facing staff really knew a lot about what would be successful if we brought it to scale. And so we listened. Advising was a big part of that. I think we revamped advising about 5 times over the course of 15 years. And Kathleen was a part of at least 3 of those. And they do a really good job. And they do a tremendous job.
I'm going to talk about the most recent one, and it was right around 2015. And I don't think it was the silver bullet, but I do think it was one of the big levers. We went from a cafeteria style of advising where people would show up and see the next advisor who was available, to assigning every student an advisor. And if they couldn't see their own advisor for whatever reason that day, they could see someone else in what was called a career community. So they saw someone who is an expert in their, it could be business, it could be liberal arts, it could be STEM or health sciences. So we went to a career community model for academic advising, and we trained advisors only on those programs. So they didn't have to try and keep all these straight in their heads to try to reduce errors. But more importantly, I believe, to create a sense of belonging and a relationship between an advisor and their specific caseload. It was the first time they had their caseload of people. And we encouraged them to make referrals for personal, career, and financial issues the student was having.
And we were requiring students basically to declare a major, even if, and previous to that, it was like, whatever. And we had all these undecideds, and they were just dabbling and wandering around. So you could change your major at will any day of the week you wanted to, but just declare something, which was very powerful.
So it's not just the role of an advisor, it's all the systems and processes that support advisors in really helping a student. If you don't know the major, or you haven't helped students declare a major and they're just wandering around, hard to find them. So that's really sounds like a comprehensive reform. But what catches my eye and ear is that you kept iterating the design. So what data did you use to know if you were on track or not? And how did you then build accountabilities in the organization to have that kind of agility to keep changing? That's hard to do.
Steve, I'm happy to take this one. One thing, President Johnson always said is, look at quantitative data, but don't forget about qualitative data. And so we did focus groups with students, our board did focus groups with students, and I don't remember the year, Steve, but one year advising took a huge hit in those focus groups.
It was pretty bad.
Yeah. And so it was great because the board was hearing what we were hearing. And so we were able to say, okay, this is a problem. And then for a while, we got almost no complaints in advising. And then as they pop up again, it's a good kind of signal to us. It's time to take a fresh look Have we, dropped any balls? Has the world around us changed in such a way that we need to iterate again?
Ohio adopted a performance-based funding model where 100% of the state portion of public community college funding is based on this model. That was also helpful in giving us metrics that were standardized. So, and quite frankly, when it was launched about 7-8 years ago, when we ranked ourselves, I don't know, there wasn't a state ranking, but we took the liberty of ranking ourselves. Out of the 23 community colleges, we were the 18th most successful, which really messed with our reality because we think of ourselves as much better than that, but we were objectively 18th in that model. And we have worked then to improve our student success rates against that. And we have done so.
There's a question in the chat about course redesign and program redesign, and we really haven't talked much about that part of the work, but I'm sure that you did some work there. So can you say a little bit about how you went through that course redesign and program redesign process?
Sure. As we were doing the maps and people were looking at how they wanted to lay out their programs, one of the beauties of that is academic advisors sat with program faculty, and the academic advisors knew the gen ed portions, the non-program portions, how it was going to transfer, and the faculty knew their discipline really well. And so that coming together created opportunities to look at toxic courses, like don't take these two courses together, it's going to kill people. We could see some of those things in our data, as well as what was going to transfer. And many of our chairs sit regularly with our primary transfer partners to make sure that everything that we do is going to transfer. And one of our faculty said, I just had to change a couple outcomes and now they're taking all our 200 level courses. And so that intentional coming together with transfer partners can really help strengthen the program here at Sinclair, but also help students with transfer success.
Those are really good examples. Steve, you talked about the tax levy and community support early in the presentation, and my sense is that in some ways you've been able to have stronger case making about Sinclair and the power of Sinclair in community transformation because of the student success work. And I'm wondering how you've done that case making, what that looks like.
So we're on the externally we're on the ballot every 5 years, and so that's a pretty cut and dry. I mean, it's a measure that results in important levels of funding. So, and we're on the ballot in the public every 5 years, and we're making the case that we are working to help more students get more education faster for less money, that our programs are ever more reflective of the needs of the community as measured by you, the community, and that our successful students ever more reflect the diversity of origin, because we need people to be providing for themselves and their families and to participate in our communities and so we have the data for that, and we're on the ballot every 5 years to do that. And it's like an entire year every 5 years, which we all do that, but that's a very intense time. We then purposely have board retreats with community leaders every year, and other things that we're doing for that case making and the external. Internally, we know that our local tax levy is, both of them together, it's 25% of our funding. So and it's a pass fail. I mean, you don't just get partial funding, or it's a pass fail. So you get it all or you get none. And so we understand that our accountability and our value to the community needs to be pretty clear. And they're pretty demanding. This is not a county that's a slam dunk. It's very demanding.
Well, in these political times, to have that overwhelming support for the idea of Sinclair is just amazing. So congratulations.
I would agree that is amazing in these times.
It is amazing. So as we get close to wrapping up, Steve, what's next for Sinclair?
So we're looking out at probably enhancing more industry certifications, more short-term, more non-credit. We're looking at the fact that we all have to do more work with our healthcare institutions, and this was really, I think, Kathleen's idea with a smaller group of our colleagues about academies, specific career academies for specific employers, and that's working well. We have an academy. Also, in addition to that, we have a very successful academy now with a local private big university, the University of Dayton. It's called the UD Sinclair Academy, where you're dual enrolled, and that's working really well. So the employer named academies, like the Kettering Hospital Sinclair Academy, that's showing great promise. So that's also next. Also next is the whole Community College 3.0. Like, community leaders are pleased that our enrollment is what it is. They're pleased that our success rates are what they are, but they're like, that was so yesteryear. We really want to know what is happening to your graduates when they leave you, and we want you to tell us, where are they working and how well are they doing? And quite frankly, we're not currently set up to answer those questions. We can in pockets, but to do that holistically, systemically, and reliably is not what, and that'll be coming next. How well are we doing after Sinclair?
Well, I want to thank both of you for the presentation and congratulate you on earning the Leah Meyer Austin Award. It's great to have this conversation. I think we could go on for another hour with even more. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ryan Knight from the ATD team to wrap this up, and I want to thank everybody who participated. We see a lot of your questions, and we'll see if there's a way that we can get back to you on some of those answers. Ryan?
Thank you so much, Dr. Stoughton. Thank you, President Johnson and Dr. Cleary. We have had a wonderful time here with you today, and we are just wanting to share a couple final engagement opportunities for this academic year, both on 11s these next couple months. Finally, this webinar has been part of our network engagement webinar series for this year. Our final of the 4 is going to be coming up in just a few weeks on April 11th, which is focused on forming strong cross-sector pathways to college and career success. So we hope that you'll be able to join us for that. And then finally, we are very excited to announce that we will be offering a Student Parent Success Summit that is one day on May 11th from around 11:15 a.m. Eastern until 5 p.m. And we hope that you'll be able to register for that and join us for that. It is completely free for all ATD network colleges, thanks to generous funding from the ECMC Foundation. In the chat, I've gone ahead and shared the link to ATD's events page, and you can find the registration links for both that final webinar on April 11th and then for the following month on May 11th, the Student Parent Success Summit. So have some wonderful programming up ahead before we wrap up the academic year. But thank you so much for being here today. Again, special thanks to Sinclair Community College and congratulations to both of you. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, and thank you to our audience today for joining us. It's been a wonderful time. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.